Tonight on Reporting Scotland, the battle over Brexit. The First Minister says if there is a special deal for Northern Ireland, then Scotland must also get its own arrangement.
If that's practically possible for Northern Ireland, there's no reason that that kind of special status isn't also practically possible for Scotland.
Also on tonight's programme, more problems for NHS Lothian over waiting times. An investigation finds they have been underreported at all of its acute hospitals. Criticism over how people with conditions like this motor neurone disease sufferer are cared for. In sport, Anderlecht arrive in Glasgow for their Champions League clash with Celtic. And the rock star Sting launches his personal love song to shipbuilding on the banks of the Clyde. Good evening. The First Minister says that if a Brexit deal can be done, which in effect keeps Northern Ireland in the single market, then Scotland should also benefit from such an arrangement. She was commenting as reports emerged from Brussels that an agreement was being considered which would prevent the return of a hard border between the North and the Irish Republic. Today's talks between Britain and the EU ended without a deal. Here's our political correspondent, David Porter.
Making Scotland's presence felt in Whitehall as the pace of Brexit quickens. This saltire in the window of a Scottish MP's office making no secret of where loyalties lie. In the government offices around here, there is also a preoccupation with how Brexit will impact on devolution. Will Holyrood gain or lose out? In Brussels, a day of high-tempo negotiations. Nothing signed or sealed, but talk of a deal in the offing, including the fraught issue of the Northern Ireland border. And tonight demands that if such an agreement is struck, then Scotland should get a similar deal.
Firstly, if that's practically possible for Northern Ireland, there's no reason that that kind of special status isn't also practically possible for Scotland, which of course is what the Scottish Government has been arguing for. But secondly, if Northern Ireland is to have a special status, it becomes all the more important that Scotland does. If Scotland finds itself outside the single market, but Northern Ireland is still in, we will be doubly disadvantaged when it comes to jobs and investment.
In the Commons chamber, criticism of the UK government's core strategy.
Clause 11 of this bill, which is intolerable to the devolved administrations, sets as a default that powers currently exercised in Edinburgh, Cardiff and Belfast within EU frameworks will be ripped away and held in London. First Ministers are calling this a Whitehall power grab.
And later, sharp exchanges.
The Secretary of State and the United Kingdom Government have made it absolutely clear that after Brexit, the Scottish Parliament is going to be much more powerful than it is as of today. But despite that, he continues to stand and spout what he is saying, which is just not the case.
But here we are, 17 months after the referendum. No new powers for Scotland. In fact, Brexit means Scotland losing powers.
This power grab talk, this naming one power, it's pantomime. What this government is involved in is the reality of negotiating a way forward on this matter.
But it's in meetings like this where much of the real nitty-gritty work is going on. Last week in Edinburgh, the UK and Scottish governments held the latest in a series of discussions to try and broker an agreement. Scottish ministers are also regular visitors to the Cabinet Office in Whitehall. They'll be back again next week. Progress is being made, but it's tough going, and there's no guarantee of success. Tonight, the festive lights are burning brightly at Westminster. Inside, MPs are settling themselves in for a late-night Brexit debate. There are likely to be far more of these to come. David Porter, reporting Scotland, Westminster.
Well, David is still at Westminster for us, and Glenn Campbell joins us from Holyrood. And Glenn, Nicola Sturgeon isn't alone in asking for a special deal if there are any going.
Well, the Scottish Government set out a paper almost exactly a year ago suggesting that Scotland, if not the whole of the UK, should stay inside the single market and the customs union. The UK Government rejected that. Nicola Sturgeon has returned to that argument today in light of reports about a possible agreement over Northern Ireland between the UK and the European Union, and her call that if arrangements are to be made to allow Northern Ireland in effect to stay within the single market, that deal should be available to other parts of the UK, found echo from the Leave voting Wales area, from the First Minister there, Carwyn Jones, from the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, and also from the Chief Minister of Gibraltar. But it is the voice of Arlene Foster, the leader of the Democratic Unionist Party in Northern Ireland, currently outside of government but supporting the Conservative government at Westminster, that seems to have had the most sway today, because she is very clear that her party will not accept an arrangement for Northern Ireland that creates difference with the rest of the United Kingdom. So today was supposed to be a breakthrough moment in the Brexit talks. That breakthrough has been delayed.
Thank you, Glenn. Well, let's go to David at Westminster. David, is it likely that Theresa May's proposed deal to give Northern Ireland special status will survive given the opposition of the DUP?
Jackie, tonight on the face of it, I think that would be very difficult. The DUP have come out very strongly against this, and ironically, by trying to solve a problem, it looks as though Theresa May this evening has actually made things more difficult for herself. As we've been hearing, the DUP have said no way they will not support this. That is the DUP in Northern Ireland and also the MPs who are over here. And we have to remember that Theresa May is only in power, is still in Downing Street, only because she has the support of the DUP. If she falls out with them, it gets very difficult. But there's also been backlash from a number of other areas. As Glenn was saying, the political leaders in Scotland, Wales and London have all been saying, well, if it's good enough for Northern Ireland, it's good enough for our areas as well. And to add to the problems that Theresa May will be facing, there are a number of Conservative backbenchers who are very unhappy with this. Theresa May always knew that Brexit was going to be difficult. Tonight she has been reminded of that very, very forcefully.
David, thank you very much, and thank you to Glenn Campbell too. It's emerged that emergency waiting times at every acute hospital run by NHS Lothian have been underreported. An investigation was prompted by concerns that national guidelines weren't being followed at St John's Hospital in Livingston. It now appears other hospitals were doing the same. Well, our reporter Stephen Gordon is at St John's. Remind us what the problem was there, Stephen.
Well, Jackie, these problems in emergency waiting times first came to light here at St John's when a whistleblower came forward to say that they had concerns that staff who were busy, who were under pressure in the emergency department, weren't recording waiting times properly, and that as a result missed targets were being underreported. Now, those allegations were looked into and they were found to have some merit, and so NHS Lothian broadened the scope of their investigation to look at their other hospitals with front door emergency care. So they looked at the sick kids, they looked at the Western General, the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh, and today they published their conclusions. Now, essentially the conclusions are that the same thing has been happening there. Staff who are busy, who are under pressure, have been following local guidelines when it comes to reporting, not national guidelines, and as a result these missed targets are being underreported.
What is NHS Lothian going to do, Stephen?
Well, in this internal review, there were a number of recommendations that were put forward around training, around better support for staff and around monitoring. Now, NHS Lothian say that several of those have already been put in place. They include in that a standardised operating procedure. They say part of the problem was that their procedures before were perhaps unclear and perhaps out of date. So they've changed that. They're putting in place an improvement plan, which they will discuss later this week. As for wider implications, well, when these allegations came to light, the Health Secretary, Shona Robeson, ordered an independent review. That independent review is still to report back. She says it is important that it's allowed to do that in order to understand the potential implications implications on this 4-hour target. So we will wait for that. Shona Robertson says she welcomes the interim actions that NHS Lothian have put in place, but she says that this situation is very concerning.
Thank you very much, Stephen Gordon. Too many people with neurological conditions like motor neurone disease aren't getting the care they need, according to a leading charity. The Scottish Government says it's developing a national action plan. But the Sue Ryder charity is concerned whether it will actually be delivered at a local level. Here's our health and social care correspondent, Shelley Joffrey.
5 years ago, Callum Ferguson was sent home to die. The fact he's still here is down to the tailored care package arranged jointly by NHS Forth Valley and Stirling Council.
I was diagnosed with MAD when I was 46, following a stay in both intensive care by my local hospice. The package was put together which included a 24/7 care firm and support from my local council care department. That was done very quickly to get me home to die, and 5 years later, I'm still here to tell the tale.
Care at home like this costs around £150,000 a year. To stay in hospital would cost 5 times more. Even so, it's not available everywhere. A recent survey for Sue Ryder found 86% of people with neurological conditions are in care homes for the elderly. It found 9 out of 14 health boards have no neurological services plan, and 6 boards don't intend to come up with one. The issue will be debated at Holyrood tomorrow. The charity wants an end to the postcode lottery on care.
The important thing is it's about people who want to live their lives to the full at home or wherever they are in the community, and that the health service works with local authorities and charities to make sure that people in the community get the care and support that they need.
In Lanarkshire, Thomas McGreevy's wife Dee is in a care home for the elderly. She's 58.
If my wife could have looked at herself from 3 or 4 years back, she would be absolutely appalled. She would be absolutely appalled. It is a mere existence.
Since we last spoke, her care package has improved, but not without a long fight. There's only one purpose-built unit in Scotland for people in Dee's position, and very few get the sort of care at home that Callum receives.
100%. Without the care package, there's no way I'd be sitting here today.
The Scottish Government says it's already extended free personal care to everyone under 65, and it will publish more details on its action plan in the coming months. Shelley Joffrey reporting, Scotland, Dunblane.
The search of a landfill site for missing RAF airman Corey McCaig is expected to end by Christmas. Mr McCaig, who's originally from Dunfermline, vanished on a night out in Bury St Edmunds. Police believe he climbed into a waste bin and was taken away by a bin lorry. The search of a landfill site in Cambridgeshire restarted in October after a search ended there earlier in the year. 2 men have appeared in court accused of deliberately causing a fire which destroyed a house in Annan last month. 6 people, including 3 young children, were inside the property when it caught fire in the early hours. 22-year-old James O'Brien and Christopher Harkins, who's 33, appeared in private at Dumfries Sheriff Court, charged with theft and willful fire-raising. The case was continued without plea and they were remanded in custody. The new chair of the Scottish Police Authority, the body which oversees the national force, has taken up her post. The former Labour Health Minister, Susan Deakin, takes over at a time of unprecedented turmoil for the police service, as our Home Affairs correspondent, Reval Alderson, reports.
In recent months, the Scottish Police Authority has had to make some high-profile and highly controversial decisions. It's put the Chief Constable, Phil Gormley, on special leave while he is investigated for allegations of bullying behaviour amounting to gross misconduct. Now, that special leave, which began in early September, was last week extended until the end of this month. Also, the SPA has had to suspend an Assistant Chief Constable, Bernie Higgins, and 3 other officers over allegations of criminality and gross misconduct. They are being investigated by an independent body which the SPA referred the cases to. Throw into the mix the fact that the chair of the SPA, Andrew Flanagan, has had to step down following allegations of bullying behaviour on his part, and you'll see that Susan Deakin has quite a task on her hands. Now, she hasn't been speaking today. She presumably has a fairly full in-tray, but she has been saying that she's looking at the cases currently under investigation and has pledged to drive forward change and improvement in the organisation. She also says she wants to accelerate the pace of improvement in the SPA, which she says has already begun. Now, being chair of the SPA is a part-time job, at least theoretically. Rival Alderson reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
It's almost 7:15. A reminder now of tonight's top story. The First Minister says that if a Brexit deal can be done, which in effect keeps Northern Ireland in the single market, then Scotland should also benefit from such an arrangement. And still to come on the programme, sold to the highest bidder, why Commonwealth medalist Kirstie Gilmore has been auctioned off. Councillors in Murray have agreed more than £6.5 million of budget cuts, which will now go out for public consultation. Last week it emerged Murray was one of 3 Scottish councils which faced running out of money because they've been raiding their cash reserves to plug annual shortfalls. Well, our reporter Craig Anderson can give us the latest. He's in Elgin for us this evening. Craig.
Well, Jackie, as you say, £6.7 million worth of budget cuts have been agreed by councillors here today at a relatively short special meeting. That will translate, as we understand it, into something like 100 jobs going, from senior civil servants in offices like the one behind me here, all the way through to lollipop ladies and men, school crossing patrols as we know them. Now, the thing is that we know about the raiding of these cash reserves, which came up in an Audit Scotland report last week. And the council says even with these savings, it'll have to do the same next year to the tune of several millions of pounds. But after that, those cash reserves will be effectively exhausted. And as a result, the leader of Murray Council says that from then on they'll have to look at even more serious cutbacks, and that makes school closures inevitable.
We're going to have to look at the number of buildings we look after for a start, and that for me also means we're going to have to look at the school estate. I've always said we cannot maintain 54 schools, and I think we can prove on educational basis that it is a good idea to amalgamate some of these schools.
Now, this is the start of the process and not the end of it. The detailed plans will be published tomorrow. They go out to public consultation. There was no vote against the proposals by the main opposition SNP group today, but depending on what the public say, and there could well be some serious hostility to these plans, well, that's all to play for when they come back to set the budget for next year in February of next year. Jackie.
Great, thank you. The death has been announced of the former Scottish Labour MP Jimmy Hood. He was 69. Mr Hood was first elected to the Commons in 1987 as the MP for Clydesdale. He later held the seat of Lanark and Hamilton from 2005 until 2015. He was a former National Union of Mine Workers trade union official during the miners' strikes of the 1980s. Sport now, and Brendan Rodgers says he wants to reward fans tomorrow with his first home win in the Champions League group stages as Celtic manager. It's 4 years since the club's last victory in the competition at Parkhead. Let's get an update now from Cerridon Idsan.
Meet the men on mission implausible. To stay alive in Europe, Belgian champions Anderlecht need a 3-goal win tomorrow night. Given Celtic beat them 3-0 in Brussels at the end of September, that appears unlikely.
Edouard, couple of step overs, and it's a double for the Frenchman.
Celtic's domestic dominance now stretches to 67 games unbeaten, but the architect of that fine run has yet to savour a Champions League group stage win at Parkhead.
We want to give the supporters here a Champions League victory at home. You know, we've been in 2 campaigns now, this being the last game of the Champions League campaign. It's been absolutely brilliant. The supporters have been incredible for us home and away, but it'd be nice for us to finish this campaign with a victory at home and take us to 6 points, which would again show, a great level of progress for us at this level.
While the goals rain in against Scottish opposition, Celtic haven't won at home in the Champions League for 4 years. So will that drought drag on against the best of Belgium?
I can already predict what's going to happen tomorrow. We're going to come on the pitch. There will be noise all over. The crowd will put them behind their team. They will fly like hell on the pitch, so we're going to have to be ready because the start will be possibly devastating.
Celtic know that anything better than a 3-0 defeat means they'll be playing in the Europa League in the new year. Quite a personal milestone too for club captain Scott Brown. When he leads the side out tomorrow evening, he'll become the first Scot to play 69 matches in Europe's premier competition. Kirstie Gilmore reporting Scotland, Lennoxtown.
Now, you often hear of paintings and jewellery going under the hammer at auction. But sports stars? Well, that's exactly what happened to Commonwealth medalist Kirstie Gilmore. The 24-year-old has been auctioned off to compete in the Indian Premier Badminton League. Gilmore says her £38,000 price tag for 3 weeks' work is a major payday. Jane Lewis can tell us more.
A normal training session, but a different kind of challenge awaits for Scotland's and Britain's top female badminton player.
I was contacted by one of the managers of one of the teams just to put my name forward for the auction, and you have kind of a base price dependent on your world ranking at the time. There's no guarantee that you'll be bought, but luckily I have been.
126 Kaushik B. 126 Kaushik B. Do we have interest in Kaushik B?
The unusual auction took place in India as team managers set about buying their players for this year's action.
The Premier Badminton League is made up of 8 teams. 133 players, some of the world's best, were up for auction. Each team had £245,000 to spend in total, but there was a cap of £86,000. That was the maximum each team could spend on one player.
A bidding war broke out for Gilmore, but Bengaluru Blasters won her services.
Bengaluru Blasters, yours.
With the hammer falling at £38,000.
This really is like a world-class event, and it's organised so well, and badminton in India is huge. So the fact that someone has paid so much, it's a really nice feeling.
Currently ranked 17 in the world, Gilmore's potential was spotted early. 10 years ago, she was aiming high.
Playing Commonwealth Games and the Olympics would be good, but winning a medal would be even better.
A medal came at Glasgow 2014, and this latest achievement has also impressed.
It is only the top few players in the world that are getting it, so for them to view her in that standing, hopefully she can go over and continue that.
These opportunities don't come along very often, and I really have to grab at them, not just for to be able to spend right now, but as a pension plan for later in life.
So planning for the future, even though in the short term her Indian stint means she'll miss Christmas with the family. Jane Lewis, reporting Scotland.
The musician Sting has been in Glasgow to launch a UK tour of his first musical. The Last Ship is a tribute to the shipbuilding community where he grew up in the northeast of England. But he believes it'll have a special resonance for Scottish audiences. Our arts correspondent Pauline McLean reports.
May the angels protect me if all else should fail when the last ship sails.
He describes it as a love song to the shipbuilding community he knew as a boy.
The noise at the end of the world in your ears.
The Last Ship has been performed on Broadway and around the world. But for its creator, Sting, there was a natural audience much closer to home, in his native Newcastle and in Glasgow.
I think it will resonate more here than perhaps anywhere else because of that history and that shared experience. So I'm delighted to come here and tell that story because it's a similar one to what happened here. I was inspired by what happened here in the 70s with Jimmy Reed and his fabulous work here and his eloquence, speaking for his people, and that was one of the inspirations behind it.
The show brings his career full circle, having first started out in musicals.
I played the bass for Andrew Lloyd Webber's Technicolor Dreamcoat, and I loved it. I really loved it. I did a few plays. I never thought I'd come back to that same theatre as the gaffer, which I've done now, full circle. But it's been a wonderful journey, and I think the most exciting 7 years of my career.
Not a pension or a pittance when your whole life is through. Get this through your head, I'm nothing like you.
The show, which stars Jimmy Nail, will tour 12 cities next summer, including Glasgow and Edinburgh.
And you'll never see me walking in these dead men's boots.
Pauline McLean reporting, Scotland.
Thank you.
Lucky Pauline, my youth, my... Don't you say a word. Let's get the weather now.
Say nothing. Jackie, thank you very much indeed. Hello there. A reasonable day for many of us today. Some lovely blue skies in the capital there earlier, taken by one of our weather watchers, and largely dry overnight tonight. I say largely because you'll see on the chart there a few speckled showers here and there. Some clear skies across parts of southern Aberdeenshire and Angus, so chilly here down to around 2 Celsius, but a chance of seeing the northern lights. Elsewhere cloudy and nothing quite that cold, but the winds will be strengthening overnight, particularly so for the north coast and the Northern Isles. So tomorrow, a breezier day than today, a fairly cloudy day, largely dry, but you'll notice the rain up towards Shetland just starting to edge its way southwards, affecting the Hebrides by mid-afternoon, perhaps in towards parts of Highland region as well. Elsewhere, largely dry but fairly cloudy. Any sunshine really sort of in short supply. The best chance of seeing anything brighter towards the east coast, through the borders, East Lothian, the capital, Fife, Angus, Aberdeenshire, but further west fairly cloudy, and by this point turning wet through the northwest, with that rain coming in on a brisk southwest breeze, but reasonably mild. Now, the rest of the afternoon into the evening and overnight, that way weather starting to edge its way further south and east, and it will be breezy and damp for some. And really, it's the precursor to a change by midweek to something much wetter and indeed much windier. Here's the culprit. Area of low pressure out in the Atlantic. You can see this tangle of weather fronts bringing outbreaks of rain across the country. The tightening of the isobars, so quite windy gales around the west coast. So wet and windy come Wednesday. Not wet all day everywhere, but certainly pretty soggy at times, but reasonably mild. Actually, the air within that coming to us from Bermuda, so temperatures easily in double digits. But it moves through at a pace, off it goes, and that means we open the floodgates to cold Arctic air for Thursday, Friday, and into the weekend. And actually will be really quite windy first thing Thursday. So after a wet, mild, windy Wednesday, Thursday, Friday and the weekend, really quite chilly, bitter northerly winds and some snow showers. That's the forecast for now.
It's throwing everything at us, Christopher. Thank you very much. And that's Reporting Scotland. I'll be back with the headlines at 8 and our main evening roundup, our late bulletin. Join us if you can, just after the 10 o'clock news. Until then, from all of us on the team, right across the country, good evening.